Hi, I'm Grace, and I interviewed Miss Linda Dixon. Please enjoy the interview. So, don't be afraid to be honest. We want to hear you without any filter, because that's the best way for us to learn as part of the younger generation. And of course, if at any time you say anything that you didn't mean to, just let me know and I can edit it out. And of course, if you're uncomfortable with any of the questions, just let me know. So, thank you again for joining me. Um, I guess we'll start off with telling us about yourself. Where did you grow up? How did you get to where you are today? Essentially, what's your life story?
Wow. Well, I grew up in nearby Medford, and I went to Tufts University, like a mile from where I lived, and I absolutely loved it. It was exactly the right place for me, and I've been involved and deeply involved in alumni activities in Tufts ever since I've left. So it's a huge part of my life. Now, I was an English major, and back in those days, this is 59 to 63. Back in those days, if you were an English major and you didn't want to teach, you didn't have too many options as a woman available to you. Mm-hmm. So one of the most common things that we did if you went into business is you became a secretary. I mean, that was the most you could hope for. So I took a shorthand, get this, I took a shorthand and typing course, no credit, just to give me the skills, just in case I would need them. The class met Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday at 8 a.m. Now, how many people do you know today would take a non-credit course and get up at Saturday morning at 8 a.m.? But I did. And as it turned out, it was my shorthand teacher who got me my first job. She tore a little article out of the paper that was a major company, part of W.R. Grace, not far from Tufts, was hiring an executive secretary. Mm-hmm. And I ended up getting that job and working as an executive secretary for 2 years. I was actually lucky. It was really it was the top level of a secretarial job as they go. And you know what? I wouldn't trade those 2 years. And some career advice that I would give any younger person going through school is, don't worry about your first job like it has to be perfect. It has to take advantage of everything I've ever studied, not at all. You can learn, and you will learn so much from every job you have. Just work as hard as you can, do the very best job you can, and know that you're going to learn some lifelong lessons. I learned so much in those 2 years. I learned business protocol, how one behaves in business. Well, that's pretty important. Plus, I can type like the wind. And now, since we're a computer-based society, knowing how to type is a pretty good skill. And I learned a lot of other skills. Anyway, am I going into too much detail?
I think that's perfect.
Okay, so 2 years later, I thought, well, maybe it's time for me to try something else. So I was very impressed with a college recruiter who came to campus 2 years ago in my senior year. And I just, naively called her up. She was still working. And I said, hi, we met 2 years ago at Tufts. And she didn't miss a beat. She said, well, yes, Linda, I remember you. How are you? And I thought, oh, this woman is professional. I mean, like she remembered me, right? But she made me feel so welcome. And she said, as a matter of fact, um, we do have an interesting job opening. You might want to come in and talk to me. And that led to working for 7 or 8 years for AT&T. The branch of it was New England Telephone. And I had about 7 jobs, and they were all in the area of training, customer relations, communications. It was wonderful. I mean, I just did, and I found that was what I liked doing. That was my niche. And interestingly, about 5 years into my job, the woman who hired me got married, got pregnant, and I can't remember if the policy was you had to leave when you were pregnant or she chose to. But anyway, she resigned and asked me if I wanted to take her place. So that was pretty wonderful. So I spent the last couple of years there as a college recruiter. And I got to tell you that I thought that would be my forever best job. It turned out later it's my second best job. But there was a whole team of us from all over AT&T, all the different branches of AT&T. And we would visit a college campus and we would just interview like mad for a day or two. And if I found someone who wasn't appropriate for the jobs that I had to offer, I could bring that person right next door to the interviewer who had an appropriate job and bring the two together. It was very efficient. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I did that, had a wonderful career. Then I took a chance and went to work for a real estate developer. And this was a young man who had worked with his 2 older brothers. And up until this point, they had developed apartments, just residential apartments, and they had them all over the greater Boston area. And he decided he wanted to do something slightly different. He wanted to build mixed income housing where people of high income, middle income, and low income could all live together in the same housing situation, and nobody would know who was who. Mm. And it was such a much better way to provide housing for low-income people than putting them all together in a project, which would tend to become a slum because of the lack of care and attention that it was given. Mm. And so he formed his own company, and I was the 4th employee. There was himself, his partner, the bookkeeper, and me. And I was the director of marketing. So, I took a chance, but when you're young, I didn't think I was taking a chance. And he went on to become a major player in the real estate development world. I'll say he's built things in about 5 or 6 states. So I was with him for 4 years, and I learned on the job. I learned how to be a marketer, how to research, how to sell, and everybody taught me. The fellow who brought in the furnished model apartments, I learned all about how to furnish a model apartment. I learned how to write a newspaper ad, how to write a brochure from the advertising people we hired. So after about 4 years, for various reasons, I decided to go out on my own. And I hung up a little shingle and I became Linda Dixon Marketing Services. And my specialty was market research. I would work for condominium developers. Now, this is the 70s, and the early 80s, and condos were just being built everywhere. They had been discovered by the public.
Mm-hmm.
And I would, a condominium developer would have some land, and an architect would walk it and say, you can get 80 residential units here.
Mm-hmm.
And then he would say, okay, now what'll I do? He couldn't just go to the bank and say, may I have $10 million, please? I want to build 80 housing units, because the bank would say, like, where's your plan?
Mm-hmm.
So I would help him prepare his marketing plan. So I did all of the research around what was happening to help him decide what to build, who to sell it to, who was his target market, who was most likely to buy these things, what did they want,
Mm-hmm.
about how much were they willing to pay, how many could he build in a year,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. And I ended up doing that consulting work for 20 years. And then after going through 3 recessions, I said, okay, enough is enough. Maybe I should try something else. And then right around that time, Tufts University, just being in the right place at the right time, I happened to be the president of the Tufts University Alumni Association.
Mm-hmm.
And I was invited to join the search committee for a new president. And at the same time, there was an opening coming up in about 9 months for the secretary to the board of trustees, which basically is being the trustees' business agent.
Mm-hmm.
And I, just because of, well, it isn't just because, but I was being on that committee working with a whole bunch of trustees. Somebody had the bright idea that, oh, Linda might be just right for that job. So I went into the world of higher education, and that was my last job. And I worked at Tufts University for 16 years, 18, I've lost track. And my job was to organize the meetings of the Board of Trustees, to be the liaison between the trustees and the rest of the university, to work with the president and the chair of the trustees, to just make sure that all of their decisions got carried out. And I got to meet the most wonderful people, because trustees, not only of Tufts University, but any other university, do this job for love. They get no money. They work long hours, and they do it because they love their institution. So it was a distinct pleasure for me to work with these wonderful people. So that's essentially my career. Then when I retired, which was about 10 years ago, I realized that I would leave for work at 7 in the morning, and I'd get home at 6:30 at night. And I hardly knew anybody in my town. You know, I live in a condo here, and I knew my neighbors in the condo, and that's it. I didn't know anything about my town. So I said, I'm going to make it my business to volunteer within Lexington and get to know Lexington. And by golly, I've achieved my goal. I'm doing a bunch of stuff here in town, and I'm no longer a stranger. I know a lot of people, but it keeps me busy. And I think that's very important. You got to stay active.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. So I guess we'll go off what you finished with, which is being involved in Lexington. I know we talked earlier in our first call about the Lexington's Town Celebrations Committee. So
Yeah,
you're part of that, right?
yeah, that was my very first venture.
Mm,
Yep. Um, I was invited to, could I just lend a hand at Patriots Day on the day of the parade?
mhm.
And I was sure I'd be happy to. So I worked at the registration table where all the parade units sign in and say, okay, we've arrived. Where do we go? And we tell them where to line up. And that was kind of fun. And then I was asked, did I want to come to the committee meeting after the parade where everybody has after what we call an after action meeting where we go over what happened and everything. So I go to the meeting and I discover that they sort of assume I'm a new member. And I thought, well, okay, I didn't really volunteer, but all right, this looks pretty good. So that's my first venture into joining Lexington organizations, and I've been up to my knees in town celebrations since well for the last 10 years. So it was a good choice. And what I say about town celebrations is, unlike some other committees where you have to give a yes no decision to people like finance or zoning or things like that, our job is just to bring joy to people, bring joy and happiness and celebrations. So it's a very nice assignment, you know.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Um, how is the group doing now that the pandemic's hit?
Well, like everybody else, we just decided we had to do some creative thinking. Um, Unfortunately, right around Patriots Day in April, we learned, everything's canceled. We didn't have time to come up with to do anything, no alternate planning. But by Memorial Day, we'd already begun thinking, and one of our members said, "I think we should do a video." So that led to producing a 15 or a 20-minute video program that was shown on Lex Media and other places. And we involved lots of people throughout town. The point of the media was to visit many of the war memorials in town. And we engaged Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts and the Lexington Minutemen and certainly veterans.
Mm.
And we videoed them in small groups, like one, laying wreaths at the memorials. And we gave some history of the town and our involvement in the different wars and honored those who had been lost. And we had some wonderful narrators. We thought, who do we know who have really good voices? And we thought of 2 or 3 people and called them up, and they were more than happy to work with us. So it's all narrated by people with lovely voices. And we're really pleased with how it came out. And we're hard at work probably doing something similar like that for Veterans Day, because we're still in the throes of isolation here.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think you've learned anything from being a part of this committee? Like, has it changed your perspective on Lexington, the community, yourself, or anything else?
Well, I'm not sure I've learned anything new or I've changed my perspective, but it has strengthened my perspective. First, I am so happy to live in Lexington. I love this town. Everything I see about the people, whomever we work with, people are so cooperative. They're so forward thinking. They love this town. So many people here are willing to give their time and their effort to make this a welcoming town, a community, not just, so they personally can be happy, but so it's a better town.
Mhm.
And as I said, I have just strengthened my love of this place and my knowledge of the town through this work.
Mm. Yeah. Do you have any tips for someone who wants to get involved or make Lexington a better place?
Well, it's not hard to get involved, let me tell you, because nationally, volunteerism is on the decline.
Mm.
People are just getting busier and busier with work and child rearing and just all the responsibilities that we take on. People don't have the free time in the evenings, like at 7 o'clock in the evening, to attend a committee meeting, which used to be the formula, that was the norm. And organizations, you ask any organization in town, how's your membership level, particularly among your leadership group? Could you use some more members? Could you use some more people on your executive committee? I guarantee they're all going to say, yes, 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 we could. So if anyone wants to volunteer, they won't have a problem. They will get snapped up. I know sometimes it's, yeah, but how do I do it? How do I get involved? First of all, a lot of organizations advertise, they're always putting little snippets in the paper or email or at the community center. But the way I did, in several of my involvements, I got asked, I got personally recruited. And that happens a lot. A friend might say, I'm doing this, you want to come with me? Or if someone really doesn't know what to do, ask several of their friends, because several of their friends are bound to be doing something. And one of them will say, come with me, I have a job for you. If anyone wants to volunteer, they will be welcomed with open arms by a dozen different groups. Let me just tell you.
Great, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So speaking of other groups, I know you also serve on the Lexington's Veterans Association board, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about this as well?
Well, I'll tell you how I got involved. I mean, I have military experience. I worked for a World War II veteran who was a National Guard battalion commander. And around 1974, he mentioned to me, he said, you might be interested in this. The National Guard, which was an all-male organization, is now admitting women. And it might be a really good deal. You might want to look into it because they have some very, very good opportunities. Well, at the time I said, yeah, of course, me. But I thought about it. And then when I became self-employed, I thought, I should definitely look into this because I have, my income is unpredictable. I don't have a pension plan or anything like that. And if you join the National Guard and stay in for 20 years, you can earn a pension. And meanwhile, you get paid for your work with the National Guard. And it's one weekend a month. And then I also thought, I'm as patriotic as the next person. If I can do something to help my country and provide some security for myself, I looked into it. It turned out it was a wonderful opportunity. And they had an assignment in the communications field. They produced a newspaper once a month that was sent to every guardsman in the whole state. And I went to work for the unit that produced the newspaper and did communications. And that was how I started. It was great. And I did stay in for 20 years. And I retired as a lieutenant colonel, and I had many interesting jobs. I was the public affairs officer for Camp Edwards, the base down at Cape Cod. And I established a family support program when the Gulf War started, when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, and all of a sudden, we're going over there and we're sending troops to Kuwait. For the first time in decades, 3 National Guard units got activated. Mm. And their families were just beside themselves. Suddenly their loved ones were going overseas with the army, with the forces for a year or more. And their lives were completely upturned. And we set up this support network back home to take care of the spouses and the parents and the children and the relatives of these people. And it was a very, very, very worthwhile thing to do. So anyway, I had my military background. And I knew there was something called the Lexington Veterans, because I'd come across them. But I was doing an assignment for the celebrations committee. I was going to write a newspaper article featuring some of our senior veterans in town. And it was to advertise a veterans breakfast that we run every year. It was really just to promote the veterans breakfast. Mm-hmm. And I interviewed the president of the Lexington Veterans Association. And about a week later, he called me and invited me to join the executive committee. So I think there weren't any women at the time. And he probably thought, great, diversity, let's bring a woman. So I said yes, and that is how I got my start. And my job was to interview each speaker who spoke once a month, to interview the speaker and write up a story and submit it to the newspapers to advertise our talks. So again, that was something that I could do relatively easily. It worked well. Mm-hmm. And that was some time ago. I've lost track, 6-7 years ago. And we've really, really expanded the reach, the membership, the quality of our program. I mean, we've always been known for high quality programming. Our talks are, they're the equivalent of a college lecture. They're really special. And many community members who are non-veterans come to our meetings. And something I'm particularly proud at, many women come to hear these talks. So they're shooting the stereotype that only men like talks on military subjects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. Do you think your experience on the Veterans Association board has again contributed to your view of Lexington, like the community?
Oh, yes, indeed. First, I have to tell you, veterans are very special people. They're patriots, obviously, and they love the country. And they, when you're in the military, you learn habits, you learn discipline, and you can always spot a veteran. They usually have very good posture from standing at attention, and good manners. No, but veterans are, if you're willing to join the military and to take on the lifestyle and the risks that are inherent, in the military, you are a very special person. And it becomes immediately apparent that you're dealing with very special people. I've gotten to know so many of them because we have a devoted following. We have a core group who attend each of our sessions, and then there's another group of new people or so who come each month too. And they're just they're active citizens. The community is just so lucky to have them, and they'll if you ask for their help, you know, they're there when you need it. They're reliable, they're dependable. They're just a breed apart. Very special people.
I would say, do you have any advice for individuals who are looking to join the Army, or any advice to the Lexington community to help out our veterans or active members?
Well, interestingly, we do have a member of our group whose name is Grace Lattimore, who has been working with some, I think, the guidance people at Lexington High School and some military recruiters, because his feeling is, you know, every year there are a handful of Lexington High School graduates who choose to join the military. And he wants to make sure that they are encouraged and supported in that decision. Because, you know, it's sometimes Lexington being a high income, high educational, aspirational town might look down on joining the military. He, you know, does not want that, because joining the military is a noble career. And we are hoping that this, of course, COVID didn't help any. Well, we're hoping to develop a program where any high school senior who does choose to join the military will get recognition and some support from our group. We're just working on that. So he might be an interesting person for you to talk to. And in fact, I'm going to see if we can get him recruited. He's just got some medical issues now, but a little bit later, he might be a very good person for you to talk to.
That's pretty wonderful. We've talked a lot about your involvements, but I think you mentioned that a big part, or one of your favorite jobs, was working at Tufts, just because the alumni group has been such a big part of your life. So how are you involved with Tufts now, like in the alumni association?
Okay. You know, just a comment I'll make that may very well happen to you and your peers. Some of my best friends at Tufts are not in my class year of graduation. They're older than me or they're younger than me. Mm. But we met while volunteering on a committee to do something for the Alumni Association. And we had our Tufts background in common, and we just hit it off. And I have this group of 25 Tufts friends. We get together 3 or 4 times a year. And volunteering can do that for you. So right now, I've been a member of the Tufts Alumni Council, which is the governing body of the association, for 50 years. And I just said, I think enough is enough. So I went emeritus this year. But I do have a very special job. Every so often, all universities have capital campaigns where they raise a lot of money. And right now, Tufts has embarked, I think it's in year 7 of a 10-year campaign to raise $1.5 billion. And I have a job on that campaign. I am the chair of gift planning. And we are trying to encourage alumni to just put Tufts in their estate plans. That if they're preparing their will, to think about remembering Tufts after they depart this earth, whether it's, and there's all, it's absolutely fascinating. There are so many ways that you can make a planned gift. You know, you can just say, I bequeath this much in my will. But you can give real estate. You can do it through a life insurance policy. You can create a trust. Just all kinds of interesting ways. And I work with volunteers to try to educate alumni. Hey, this might be, you want to do something special? This might be a good thing for you to do.
Oh. What made you want to keep working with Tufts?
Oh, because it changed my life. Changed my life. I came out, a different person. I think I grew up there. I got a wonderful education. I developed confidence. Although it took a lifetime to develop the kind of confidence and self-awareness that I have today. I didn't get that when I was 22, but it made me believe in myself. It gave me opportunity. I met the most wonderful people, and it was a support network. Tufts has believed in me and supported me all these years, and I follow it. I see what they're doing in the community. I think they're a leader. In fact, here in COVID-19, they led the way. Months ago, when students went home, they opened up dormitories on the Medford campus. And they provided housing for first responders who didn't dare go home and infect their spouses and their little children. They were really worried about it because they were in the hospital working with COVID patients. And so instead, they could come to a dormitory room and get meals while they worked 14-hour shifts at the hospital and keep their families safe, things like that. Tufts is just in the forefront of doing things like that. But I think it's a very special place. Mm. And I'm very happy to be its champion. And while I was working for Tufts, I was also very privileged. It took me 5 years, but I was able to get a master's degree part-time from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, which is on the Tufts campus. And that's a marvelous school. So I studied international relations. It was just, very enriching experience.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do you think these enriching experiences helped you in a way that you might not have expected? Like maybe it wasn't applicable directly to a career that you wanted to pursue, but how did it help you in the end?
Well, that's a very good question because it didn't specifically help my job. I thought I was going to study international marketing because that's, I took one course in international marketing. I did well in it, but I said, I don't think I want to spend my whole time taking these courses. It's just, it doesn't do anything for me. Mm. So I took another course just to try it out, and I fell in love with it. And it was the history of American foreign policy with China. And then I learned that increased to Japan and a little bit Korea. And I found out that studying our diplomatic history and our foreign policy with China and Japan was unbelievably gripping, fascinating. And that's what I ended up specializing in. And well, first of all, it gave me, it rewarded me to know something that stimulated. But I mean, China and Japan, they're in the news all the time, are they not? What's going on with our relationships with them and what is going on just in their own sphere as two countries. I like the fact that I have this, that I created and developed this interest. I think it makes me a more interesting person, and I can talk about it with other people. It opened my eyes. It dispels a lot of myths, you know, that we might have had about how America behaves, you know. I read newspapers cover to cover, you know, and I think it has made me a more aware person. And I have no regrets whatsoever about that. You know, even though it didn't pertain particularly to taking care of trustees.
Mm. Right. Do you have any advice for someone who doesn't know what they want to do for the rest of their life?
I had no idea what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I had none. It's normal. That's, I think, 90% of people don't know what they want to do. Mm-hmm. And we just sort of end up in jobs. We may take a few, it's like trying on shoes, you know, doesn't quite fit. Okay, I'm gonna do the best I can. I'm gonna do the best job I can on this job. I'm gonna work really hard and produce and do a good job so that I will be ready for the next job, whatever that is. And maybe that one fits a little better, but and then life has a way of moving us into strange paths. And then finally you arrive somewhere and you say, this fits. Mm-hmm. I like it. And it's nothing like you prepared for in school, but it's an opportunity. A lot of times you're already employed and somebody says, look, we have an opening here. And I'd much rather use you. You're somebody we know, we trust. We know what you can do. We'd like you to take this new position rather than go out and hire a stranger and take the risk of, you know, hiring a new person. Would you be willing to do it? Well, you might have never thought of taking on that job, but you might say, well, under those circumstances, sure. And you might find, wow, I really like this. I mean, that's how life happens, you know? Mm. So treat every job you have as a really important job and do it well, because you will be noticed. And if you are the hardest worker in the group and the best performer in the group, you're going to get the shot when the time comes. But I think too many people think that they're failing if they don't find a job that is their dream job, that matches their idea of what a dream job should be, you know. That's really being way too hard on yourself. That's not how it works in the real world. Mm-hmm. Most people I know never ended up where they thought they would be, except for doctors and dentists, because they have to make a plan when they're 18 years old. They know they need to go to undergrad, they need to go to medical school, they have to have a residency, they have to do a postdoc, and they don't even get out into the world until they're about 30 years old. That takes commitment. And I've often thought, if you're 6 years into this and you say, do I really want to do this? It's too late. I mean, you really have to be committed to do that. But other people have the flexibility to switch all the time, and they do. Mm. And they do.
Yeah. Wow. So you've worked a lot of jobs, and probably learned many things along the way. Um, do you think out of all these careers or volunteer work, um, something has stuck with you? Maybe like a pattern that you've noticed in the choices that you make, or a lesson, maybe an experience?
Well, there's a pattern in the choices I make because I know I'm a people person,
Mm,
and I know I have really good communication skills. So I have tried to choose is to the extent I can, you know. Oh, and I've become a really good writer, and I'm a good analyst. So uh, I wouldn't I wouldn't go for a job that didn't accentuate those four qualities that I had. First of all, I don't think I'd do very well, and I wouldn't be happy. So we do influence our own career choice in that we go after things we know make us feel good.
mm.
I think I've gotten off the track. Tell me about the question again. Do I
Um, Really
listen
amazing.
or anything? You have to be true to yourself. If you know what makes you happy and fulfilled, you can do well what makes you happy usually.
Mhm.
So it's an absolute joy when you find something, a job that will pay you to do something well that gives you joy. I mean, that's quite wonderful.
Yeah.
And you have some control out of that because what you need to do is do a lot of introspection and have self knowledge. I That's just something I've done all my life. I kind of keep doing take inventory. You know, all right, what do you think? What do you want? What do you? Um, so that I think I've got pretty good self awareness and self knowledge, and that's terribly important when it comes to decision making. And because you just, particularly when it comes to a career, you want to pick the path that is that blends happily with what you know you can do well and that will make you happy. But along the way, as I said earlier, along the way, you know, you may have to take on some assignments that you just know in your heart they aren't you. That's okay. It's a step in the process. You got to earn your dues. So you do that and you learn new skills along the way. You do something that, but you become really good at it, you've got a skill. Everything you do builds your skills. And something that I found when I finally took the job at Tufts, I used just about every skill I had ever developed in all the jobs I had ever had. I found I was using my interview skills from my college recruiting days. I certainly was writing. I had to write minutes of meetings galore. Uh, I was doing analyses of trends and demographics of the trustees and this, that, and the other thing. I was developing outlines and agendas for meetings. I was writing business letters, you know, developing PowerPoint presentations, um, recruiting people to either not necessarily recruiting trustees. I was forming, helping to develop a pool, and somebody else would recruit them. But and one day I remember I sat back and I said, "Son of a gun, remember that job you had that you didn't think was doing much for you? You learned how to do this skill on that job.
Mm-hmm.
So put them in a basket, carry that basket around with you, and you'll be amazed how you can use those skills over and over again. Nothing is wasted. No time that you spend in honest work is wasted."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Um, I guess out of all these experiences, do you think it's shaped your perspective on current issues, um, such as, I guess, the way the government's handled like coronavirus, um, and anything else?
Well, I have lots of opinions on current issues. I'm just not sure this is the place to talk about them. I consider myself a political junkie. And now that I have, you know, we're all home with COVID, um, I watch TV a lot. And the TV is usually news stations. And I read the newspaper. So I have lots of opinions. But as I said, I'm just not sure that this is the right place to talk about them.
That's fair. Okay. Um, um, this one's more broad, can go in any direction that you feel fits. What dangers do you think society should be warned about, or that the younger generation should really start to consider?
Oh boy. Well, I will talk about the government right now. The fact that our government is paralyzed because both sides of Congress are tribal, and it's us against them, and they're fighting each other, and therefore nothing is getting done. Nothing is getting done is a terrible danger.
Mhm.
There are so many bills that need to be passed, and there are just so many jobs that need to be done at the congressional level, um, and they're not being done. People are fighting. So that's one danger. Climate change is a terrible danger, and I think the young people are more aware of it than maybe the older generation are. But good grief. Look at those forest fires in California. Look at the hurricanes in the South. That's not an accident. That's not a coincidence.
Mhm.
And they they take lives, they cost money, and they take manpower, and they eat away at our coastline, and they pollute our air, and so on and so forth. That's another terrible challenge.
Mhm.
Um, well, healthcare. I mean, who knows? Everything is so terribly expensive. Uh, I don't know where healthcare is going. Just be thankful you don't have to have a prescription medicine. A friend of mine right now is in the hospital. She's taking intravenous medicine that costs $7,000 a week. Okay. Um, so hopefully by the time you folks are retirement age, the healthcare situation will have been resolved in a much fairer way. But that's another issue to really think about.
Mhm.
And of course, the cost of education.
Yeah.
You're all headed for college, right?
Mhm.
And college costs a lot of money these days, and that's a huge challenge to think about, because you'll be paying student debt for many years after you graduate.
Mhm.
So, but I'm optimistic. This is America. We come up with creative solutions. We don't just sit back. So I don't want to be gloom and doom. You asked me what challenges I saw. There's a few right there, but I think that you have every chance to overcome some of them, and I expect you will lead a full, productive life.
That's great. I love the bright side to this.
Oh, heck yes. You have to be an optimist.
Yeah. So I guess I'll ask one more question to kind of close it out. Of course, you can add anything that you like, but what advice would you give to me and my peers as we grow up in an ever-changing world? Any words of wisdom, any opportunities to latch on to, etc.?
Well, be flexible.
Mm-hmm.
Be flexible. It is an ever-changing world.
Mm-hmm.
And already there are trends happening that my generation never even heard of, robots and artificial intelligence and all that. Be flexible, because if you hold to one way of operating, somebody used a phrase with me and my peers, if the train leaves the station and you're not on it, then you're left behind, So you don't want to do that. And stay positive. Stay positive, because there's a solution. There's a solution. You just have to find it. And I'm sure you all will. And there are so many opportunities now coming out, particularly in future jobs that we can't even identify. Mm-hmm. The old job categories will disappear, and all new career fields are going to come in. If you and I talked 25 years from now, when I'm probably dead, you could be doing a job that we can't even guess at today. And I think that's very exciting, actually. Some people get nervous and scared about that. But that's life. Change happens. So be willing to embrace change, because it's a fact of life. And don't mourn the loss of, for instance, we're talking about a whole job area. Don't mourn that loss so deeply that you fail to see the emergence of a whole group of new jobs that have come in to replace it. Mm-hmm. Somehow, things balance out. But for heaven's sakes, you work on getting that ozone layer repaired. I think that's number one.
Yeah.
Just so you're still around and you can all still breathe.
Mm-hmm. That concludes my interview with Ms. Dixon. Please let us know any questions, and thank you so much for viewing.